Seoul's December cold bit into Zalika's skin as she ran, neon signs blurring into streaks of red and gold. Her breath came in ragged gasps, white clouds dissipating into darkness. Behind her, footsteps echoed, steady, relentless, closing in. The stranger's voice cut through the night air in rapid Korean she could barely understand, words that sounded like threats wrapped in casual conversation. Asterisk run. Just run. Asterisk. Her worn sneakers slapped against wet pavement as she rounded the corner into Itaewon's restaurant district. That's when she saw him, a man standing outside an upscale Korean barbecue restaurant, surrounded by others in expensive dark suits. Even from a distance, he commanded the space around him like gravity itself bent to his will. Sharp features, perfectly styled black hair, a neck tattoo visible above his collar that screamed danger in a language every culture understood. Without thinking, Zalika did the unthinkable. She ran straight into him. The impact was like hitting a wall of controlled violence. His body went rigid, muscles tensing beneath the expensive fabric of his suit. The men around him moved instantly, hands disappearing beneath jackets toward concealed weapons. Cold eyes locked onto her, assessing, calculating, deciding whether she was threat or prey. Zalika looked up, meeting dark eyes that held the kind of calm that preceded storms. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The stranger was still coming, his silhouette appearing at the corner behind her. Words tumbled from her mouth in broken Korean, accent thick with panic. "조성입니다, please, boyfriend. She gestured frantically behind her, switching to English. "He's following me. Please." The man's expression didn't change, but something shifted in those dark eyes. Recognition, not of her, but of the terror that made her voice shake, the desperation that had driven her to throw herself at a complete stranger. His arms slid around her waist with practiced ease, pulling her against his side. The touch was possessive, protective, and absolutely terrifying. She could feel controlled power in every muscle, could smell expensive cologne mixed with cigarette smoke, and something darker. Danger itself had a scent, and she was pressed against it. "Easy," he murmured in accented English, voice like silk over steel. "Breathe." Zalika felt his breath against her temple, felt the deadly calm radiating from him as the stranger finally reached them. She saw the moment recognition hit, the way the pursuer's confident stride faltered, the way his face went from predatory to pale in the space of a heartbeat. The man holding her spoke in Korean, voice low and conversational, but every word felt like a blade sliding between ribs. She didn't need to understand the language to hear the threat. The stranger backed away, hands raised, stammering apologies she couldn't follow. Within seconds, he disappeared back into the maze of Itaewon streets like smoke dissolving in wind. The tension didn't leave the man's body. If anything, it coiled tighter. His companions remained alert, hands still near weapons, eyes scanning the street with professional precision. She became acutely aware of everywhere they touched, his arm around her waist, her hand clutching his jacket, her body pressed against his side. He looked down at her, and Zalika felt pinned by that gaze. Dark eyes that had probably seen too much, done too much, and now evaluated her with the same cold assessment a predator gives potential prey. "You're either very lucky," he said softly in English, "or very foolish." His head tilted slightly, something almost like curiosity flickering across otherwise unreadable features. "Let's find out which." One of his men spoke in rapid Korean. The man holding her responded without looking away from her face, then returned his attention to Zalika. "My associate wants to know if you're working with someone. If this is a setup." His thumb moved in a small circle against her hip, a gesture that could have been comforting if it didn't feel like ownership. "I told him no, that you're just a frightened woman who made an impulsive decision." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Am I wrong?" "No," Zalika managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "No setup. I needed." "You needed protection." He finished for her, and something in his tone suggested he understood that particular desperation intimately. "And you chose me." A ghost of a smile touched his lips, cold and dangerous. "That makes you either very brave or very stupid." Zalika's mind caught up with her adrenaline. She was pressed against a man who radiated danger, whose mere presence had sent her pursuer fleeing in terror, whose companions carried weapons and watched her like they were calculating how quickly they could make her disappear. The neck tattoo she'd glimpsed earlier was clearly visible now. Intricate Korean characters and symbols that marked him as exactly the kind of man she'd spent 18 months learning to avoid. The kind who owned pieces of Seoul's underworld. The kind who made problems disappear. The kind who could make her disappear. Who are you? The question escaped before she could stop it. His smile widened fractionally, and it was the most terrifying expression she'd ever seen, because it was genuine. Kang Seojin, he said simply, as if the name should mean something, as if it should make her run. And you just became my problem. His arm tightened around her waist, not painfully, but inescapably. Come, we're going inside where it's warm, and you're going to tell me why someone was chasing you through my territory. His territory. Men with guns, neck tattoos and expensive suits, and the kind of calm that came from absolute certainty of power. Who the hell had she just run into? Zalika Abeni had learned early that survival in Seoul meant keeping your head down. 18 months earlier, Zalika had stepped off the plane at Incheon International Airport with 2 suitcases, a student visa, and dreams that felt simultaneously too big and too small. The language school had promised her opportunities. What they delivered was 3 months of basic Korean before her savings ran dry and reality set in. Seoul didn't care about dreams. Seoul cared about rent. The morning cleaning crew job came first. 4 a.m. starts, scrubbing office buildings in Gangnam before the business people arrived. Her supervisor, Mrs. Kim, spoke no English and seemed to find Zalika's accent endlessly amusing. But the pay was cash, the hours were early, and nobody asked questions about work permits. The cafe job filled her afternoons, serving coffee to university students who practiced their English on her like she was a language app. "You speak so well," they'd exclaim, as if expecting anything less. She smiled, pocketed tips that barely covered subway fare, and perfected the art of invisibility. Evenings belonged to tutoring. Korean families wanted their children exposed to native English speakers, though they never quite looked at her the way they looked at the white teachers. She charged less. She smiled more. She disappeared into their expectations of what help should look like: grateful, quiet, unthreatening. Keep your head down. Send money home. Survive. Her mother's voice crackled through video calls every Sunday, asking questions Zalika couldn't answer honestly. How is school? School had ended 8 months ago. Are you eating well? Convenience store kimbap and instant noodles. Have you met anyone nice? She'd met Mrs. Kim, who yelled in Korean. She'd met cafe customers who left Bible tracts instead of tips. She'd met the loneliness that came from being perpetually other. Everything's fine, Mama. I'm studying hard. Lies tasted like survival. The night everything changed, she'd been cleaning the 14th floor of an office building in Udo. Nearly midnight, exhausted, wanting nothing more than her tiny Gashawon room and sleep. She'd pushed her cleaning cart past a conference room, glancing through the glass door out of habit. Then freezing. Women, maybe a dozen, huddled on the floor. Southeast Asian features, African features, scared eyes. A man in an expensive suit gesturing toward a shipping manifest. Another man with a camera, taking photos. Words she understood even without translation. Documents, container, port. Zalika had stood there too long. Long enough for one of the men to turn. Long enough for their eyes to meet through the glass. She'd run. Not then. She'd forced herself to keep pushing the cart, keep moving, act like she'd seen nothing. But when her shift ended, she'd run. Home to her Gashawon, door locked, heart hammering. Report it. Call the police. But she wasn't documented for those overtime hours. Her visa was for language school she'd stopped attending. One call to the authorities and she'd be the one in trouble, questioned, investigated, possibly deported. How many times had other immigrants warned her? Stay invisible. The police aren't your friends. For 2 days, she'd convinced herself it was fine. They hadn't followed her. Maybe they hadn't noticed. Maybe. Then she'd spotted him. The man from the hallway, watching her cafe from across the street. Casual, patient, waiting. That night, another video call home. Her mother's face, tired but smiling. You look worried, Pensy. What's wrong? Nothing, Mama. Just tired. You work too hard. But I'm proud of you. Your sister's school fees. We couldn't manage without your help. Asterisk Stella. 14 years old, brilliant, deserving of every opportunity Zalika could buy her. Asterisk. I'll send more this month, Zalika had promised, calculating how many extra tutoring sessions she could squeeze in, how many more cleaning shifts, how many more. The call ended. The stranger was outside her building now. She'd grabbed her coat with shaking hands. Staying in felt like waiting to be caught. Moving felt like control. She'd headed for Itaewon. Crowds, foreigners, places where an African woman wouldn't stand out so much. The stranger had followed. Through subway cars and narrow streets. Past restaurants and shops. Getting closer with every turn until she was running. Really running. Cold air burning her lungs and terror driving her legs. Straight into a wall of expensive suit and controlled violence. Now, in Kang Seojin's restaurant, warm air making her shiver as adrenaline faded, Zalika looked at the man who'd wrapped his arm around her waist and made her pursuer disappear. He sat across from her in a private room, dark eyes patient and predatory. One of his men stood by the door. Steam rose from a cup of tea she hadn't touched. Who are you? She asked again, voice steadier now. Seojin's lips curved into something that might have been a smile on someone less dangerous. I already told you. Kang Seojin. He leaned forward slightly. But what you're really asking is what I am. And what you've gotten yourself into by running to me for protection. Zalika swallowed hard. The better question, he continued softly, is who are you, Zalika Abeni? Her shock must have shown. My associate is very efficient. Student visa expired. 3 jobs, all cash. Sending money to Kenya every month. His head tilted. And someone was chasing you through my territory. What? She could lie. Should lie. Keep invisible, keep safe. But his eyes saw through invisibility. And she was so tired of being unseen. I saw something I shouldn't have, she whispered. Seojin's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room dropped. Tell me everything. Seojin had been in the middle of negotiations when she'd crashed into him, literally. One moment, discussing territorial adjustments with associates from Busan. The next, a woman colliding with his chest, wild-eyed and breathless, speaking broken Korean that marked her as foreign even before he registered her features. His assessment was automatic, honed by years of survival. African, mid-20s, cheap clothing, worn shoes, hands calloused from work, not softened by scheme or artifice. And in her eyes, genuine terror. The kind you couldn't fake, the kind he'd seen in mirrors years ago when he'd been the one running. Asterisk, not a setup. Just desperate. Asterisk. The man pursuing her had frozen the moment recognition hit. Smart. Lee Dong-min ran girls through Itaewon. Thought Seojin's territory was open for exploitation. Thought wrong. Seojin filed the information away for later handling, more interested in the trembling woman pressed against his side. My restaurant, he told Min-ho quietly in Korean. Private room. Run her details. Now she sat across from him, still shivering despite the room's warmth. Min-ho had been efficient as always. Student visa expired 8 months ago, 3 cash jobs, sending money to Kenya monthly. No criminal record. No connections. Nobody. Except she'd just told him about a trafficking operation in Udo. Told him with the kind of detail that came from witnessing, not imagining. And the look in her eyes when she described those women. Asterisk, she sees herself there. Knows it could have been her. Asterisk. Something tightened in Seojin's chest. Unwanted. Inconvenient. He pushed the feeling. Zalika's hands wouldn't stop shaking as she stood in the doorway of what used to be her Gashawon room. Everything torn apart. Her mattress slashed open, foam spilling out like guts. Clothes ripped from the tiny closet and scattered across the floor. Her textbooks shredded, pages drifting like snow. The small photo of her family, her mother, her sister Stella, lay face down in a puddle of something she hoped was just water. But it was the message that made her knees weak. Spray painted across the wall in harsh red English. Forget what you saw. 2 days. Seojin had said she wouldn't see the stranger again, and she hadn't. She'd started to believe maybe it was over. Maybe she was safe. Asterisk stupid. So stupid, asterisk. Her phone was in her trembling hand before conscious thought. The black card's number already memorized because some part of her had known she'd need it. He answered on the second ring. Zalika. Just her name. He already knew something was wrong. My apartment. Her voice cracked. They destroyed. There's a message. Address. Now. All business. No sympathy. Somehow that steadied her more than comfort would have. She gave it. He hung up without goodbye. 8 minutes later, 2 black sedans pulled up. Men emerged with the calm efficiency of people who'd done this before, photographing damage, checking for surveillance, speaking in rapid Korean. Minho appeared at her side, guided her to the hallway with a gentle hand on her elbow. Boss is coming, he said in careful English. You're safe now. A third sedan arrived. Seojin stepped out wearing different clothes than 2 nights ago, dark jeans, black jacket, but the same controlled danger. He took the stairs 2 at a time, barely glancing at his men's reports before moving to stand in her doorway. His expression didn't change as he surveyed the destruction. But something shifted in the air around him, something cold and final settling into place like ice forming over deep water. He turned to her. Tell me everything. Every detail you remember from that night. So she did. Standing in the hallway of her destroyed home, she described it all. The conference room. The women on the floor. She counted 12, maybe 13. The shipping manifests with port codes. The man with the camera. The expensive suits. The way they discussed those women like cargo. One of them had a tattoo, she remembered suddenly. On his hand. A snake, I think, wrapped around his wrist. Seojin's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Lee Dongmin's operation. Itaewon trafficking ring. He looked at Minho, spoke in Korean too rapid for her to follow. Minho nodded, left immediately. I know this operation, Seojin said, turning back to her. And I'm going to end it. The certainty in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, she felt something loosen in her chest. Relief, maybe, or the beginning of it. Your things, he continued. Take what matters. You're not staying here. I can't afford anywhere else. I have a safe house. Not a suggestion. You'll stay there until this is handled. Zalika looked at her destroyed room, at the red message still dripping down the wall. Looked at this dangerous man offering protection she couldn't pay for and shouldn't trust. Why are you helping me? The question came out smaller than intended. Seojin stepped closer, and she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Dark. Unreadable. Except for something that flickered there, recognition, maybe. Understanding born from his own past of being hunted. Because I can, he said quietly. Then his gaze hardened. And because they made a mistake. What mistake? His hand lifted, fingers gentle as they tucked a loose curl behind her ear. The gesture was intimate, possessive, absolutely terrifying. Touching what's mine. The words hung between them. Zalika's breath caught. She should object. Should run. Should do anything except stand there feeling safer than she had in 18 months while a crime boss claimed ownership of her safety. I barely know you, she whispered. No. His thumb traced her cheekbone. But they don't know that. And now they'll learn what happens when someone threatens my territory. She was his territory now. Somehow, that felt less like a threat than a promise. The safe house was a penthouse in Gangnam. All floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furniture that probably cost more than Zalika had earned in her entire time in Seoul. She stood in the guest room, surrounded by luxury she'd only glimpsed while cleaning office buildings, and felt more displaced than ever. 3 days passed in strange suspension. Seojin's men came and went with quiet efficiency. He appeared each evening, checking on her like she was an investment requiring monitoring. The 4th night, he found her attempting to cook chapati on his expensive induction stove. What are you doing? He stood in the kitchen doorway, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled to reveal forearms marked with ink she couldn't quite decipher. Cooking. She flipped the flatbread, probably burning it. I can't just eat takeout forever. And you don't have any actual food here. Something almost like amusement crossed his face. I don't cook. Then you should learn. She gestured to the counter. Help me. Or watch. Either way, you're getting chapati for dinner. He helped. Hands that had probably broken bones moved with surprising gentleness as she showed him how to roll the dough. Their fingers brushed. She pretended not to notice how awareness sparked up her arm. Safi, she murmured when he managed a decent circle. Good. Safi, he repeated, testing the Swahili on his tongue. Teach me more. So she did. Between rolling dough and heating oil, she taught him basics. Asante, thank you. Karibu, welcome. Nakapenda, asterisk. She stopped herself before finishing that one. What does nakapenda mean? His dark eyes tracked her face. It's not important. She focused very hard on the chapati. The next evening, he taught her Korean in return. Not the formal phrases from her expired language school, but street Korean. Useful Korean. How to curse properly. How to say this is my territory with the right inflection to make people listen. Your accent is terrible, he said, but his lips curved. Your Swahili is worse, she countered. And suddenly they were both almost smiling. She learned he took his coffee black, worked until 3 a.m. most nights, and played old Korean ballads when he thought she was asleep. He learned she sent 70% of every paycheck home, had wanted to study international business, and sang to herself while cooking. One night, she made yugali and sukuma wiki. He made kimchi jjigae. They ate in companionable silence until he asked, why Seoul? Student visa was easiest to get. Thought I'd study, work part-time, send money home. She pushed rice around her plate. Thought wrong about the part-time being enough. Your family depends on you. My sister, Stella, she's brilliant. Deserves university, opportunities one couldn't have. Zalika met his eyes. She deserves better than I can give her cleaning buildings at 4 a.m. Understanding flickered across his face. My mother cleaned buildings too. After my father died. His jaw tightened. Before the rival gang killed her for refusing to pay protection money. The words hung heavy. Zalika reached across the table, covered his hand with hers. I'm sorry. Don't be. He turned his palm up, fingers interlacing with hers. I built everything from that loss. Built an empire so no one could make me powerless again. Is that why you help people like me? I don't help people. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I protect what's mine. The possessiveness should have bothered her. Instead, warmth spread through her chest. Later, teaching him to say samaki, fish, she mispronounced a Korean word badly. He laughed, actually laughed, head tilted back, tension leaving his shoulders. The sound transformed him, made him look younger, less dangerous. She was staring. He was staring back. The moment stretched, charged with something neither acknowledged. His phone shattered it. He answered in clipped Korean, expression hardening with each word. When he hung up, his eyes found hers. We found their warehouse. Statement, not question. I'm going there now. She should stay here. Stay safe. Let him handle it. But those women's faces haunted her dreams. Come with me, he said quietly. Or stay here. Zalika stood, heart hammering. I'm coming with you. I need to see this ended. His smile was sharp and approving. Then we ended together. The warehouse squatted in Incheon's industrial district, anonymous among dozens of identical buildings. Zalika watched from the SUV's back seat as Seojin's men materialized from shadows, 12 of them, moving with military precision. Stay in the vehicle, Seojin had commanded. Minho stays with you. No matter what you see, you don't leave. Understand? She'd nodded, throat too tight for words. Now she watched through tinted windows as Seojin approached the warehouse entrance. No hesitation. No announcement. Just controlled violence erupting like a storm finally breaking. The door crashed open. Shouts in Korean. Then sounds that made her flinch. Impacts, screams, the wet crack of bone meeting fist. Seojin moved through chaos like a blade through silk. Precise. Purposeful. Terrifying in his efficiency. This is what he is, she thought. This is what I've invited into my life. 10 minutes that felt like hours. Then his men emerged, leading women, stumbling, crying, wrapped in blankets someone had brought. Zalika's breath caught. African faces. Southeast Asian faces. Young faces that had seen too much. That could have been me. The thought settled like ice in her chest. More men emerged, hands zip-tied, faces bloodied. One was thrown to his knees in front of Seojin, the man with the snake tattoo from that night. Lee Dong-min's lieutenant. Seojin crouched, spoke quietly. Too quietly for Zalika to hear through the glass. But she saw the lieutenant's face go white. Saw him shake his head frantically. Saw Seojin's hand move. Not a punch, just pressure applied to the shoulder with surgical precision. The man's scream cut through the night. Zalika couldn't look away. Seojin stood, wiped his hands on a handkerchief like he'd merely touched something dirty. Said something to Minho through the comms. Then he was walking toward the SUV, expression unreadable. He slid into the seat beside her. Blood flecked his shirt cuff. His knuckles were split. The women. Her voice came out smaller than intended. Safe. Medical team is coming. Immigration lawyers. Safe housing. He studied her face. Are you afraid of me now? Zalika looked at him, really looked. At the violence written in split knuckles and blood spatter. At the darkness in his eyes that came from doing terrible things for terrible reasons. At the man who'd just saved 13 women while breaking the bones of those who'd caged them. Yes, she said honestly. Something flickered across his face. Acceptance, maybe. Resignation. But I'm more afraid of who I'd be if I never met you. She reached for his damaged hand, cradled it gently. I'd be invisible. Safe, maybe. But invisible. Letting terrible things happen because speaking up was too dangerous. His fingers tightened around hers. They rode back in silence while paramedics treated the rescued women behind them. Zalika watched through the rear window as one African woman, couldn't be more than 19, clutched a blanket and sobbed. One of Seojin's men spoke to her in gentle English, promised her safety. Brutal to perpetrators, gentle with victims. The duality made her head spin. Back at the penthouse, Seojin headed toward his room without a word. Zalika stood in the living room, adrenaline crashing, hands shaking with everything she'd witnessed. Asterisk, he saves people by destroying people. He protected me by becoming the monster others fear. Asterisk. She found herself walking to his door, knocking softly. He opened it, shirt already discarded, revealing ink and scars across his torso. A map of violence survived. Zalika. She kissed him. Desperate and grateful and terrified. She pressed her lips to his, hands fisting in his hair, needing to feel something other than the horror and relief warring in her chest. He went rigid, then responded with controlled intensity that promised both danger and protection. His hands found her waist, pulled her closer, possessive, careful, asking permission with every touch. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she whispered against his mouth, "Stay with me tonight." "I'm not a good man," he warned. "I don't want good." She met his dark eyes. "I want you. Not just for protection. Stay." His answer was another kiss, deeper this time, tasting like choice and consequence and crossing lines she could never uncross. And Zalika chose to cross them anyway. Zalika woke to winter sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the unfamiliar weight of an arm draped across her waist. Seojin was already awake, dark eyes watching her with an intensity that made heat crawl up her neck. His thumb traced lazy circles on her hip, possessive even in gentleness. "Habarize is subui," she murmured. "Good morning." "Joun Akim," he replied in Korean, then switched to English. "Did I say that right?" "Close enough." She smiled against his shoulder, marveling at the strangeness of this. Waking in a crime boss's bed, teaching him Swahili while Seoul spread out below them like a promise. The days that followed felt like learning a new language made of touch and trust. She moved her few salvaged belongings into the guest room, though most nights ended in his bed. Added small touches to the sterile penthouse, a kite-inch fabric throw across the leather sofa, her grandmother's carved elephant on the bookshelf, Afrobeat playing softly while she cooked. Seojin would find her dancing while making ugali, pull her against him, sway despite having no rhythm. "Teach me," he'd demand. "You're hopeless," she'd laugh, but teach him anyway. His inner circle evaluated her with varying degrees of suspicion. Minho was professional, cautiously warming. Yuna, sharp-eyed and sharper-tongued, studied Zalika like a puzzle to solve. "You're not what I expected," she said in perfect English. "What did you expect? Someone who'd run." Yuna's smile held approval. "You stayed." Jay, the strategist, simply nodded. "Boss needs someone who sees beyond the violence. Maybe you're it." The job offer came over breakfast 2 weeks in. "My import-export business," Seojin said, setting down his coffee. "Legitimate operations. International shipping, trade negotiations. I need someone with language skills, cultural knowledge." His eyes met hers. "I need someone I can trust. I don't have experience. You have 3 languages fluently, understand 4 more basically, and you survived 18 months in a foreign country on wit alone." He slid a contract across the table. "That's more qualification than most." The salary made her dizzy. Enough to send Stella to university. Enough to bring her mother to visit. Enough to stop being invisible. She discovered unexpected talent for it, negotiating with African suppliers in Swahili, Korean manufacturers in careful Korean, reading between cultural lines that others missed. Seojin watched her close a deal with a Nairobi textile company and said simply, "You were made for this." Sunday's video call home weighed differently now. "Pensy, you look so happy." Her mother's face lit up the screen. "This new job, tell me about it." "Import-export consulting. Truth, technically. Helping Korean companies expand to African markets. And they pay well." "Very well, Mama." Zalika forced brightness into her voice. "I'm sending extra this month. For Stella's school fees and some leftover." Her mother's eyes misted. "You're such a blessing. God brought you to Seoul for a reason. God or collision with a crime boss." Zalika swallowed the bitter truth. After the call, she found Seojin watching from the doorway. "You didn't tell her about me. How do I explain you?" She set down her phone. "What do I say?" "Mama, I'm living with a man who breaks people's bones, but also makes me breakfast?" Cultural clash came in small moments, his Korean directness meeting her learned indirectness. He'd demand answers, she'd offer context. He'd state facts, she'd cushion them in story. Slowly, they learned each other's languages beyond words. Learning bodies was easier. His scars told stories. Knife wound at 15, bullet graze at 23, burn mark he wouldn't explain. She traced each one, memorizing violence survived. Her hands, calloused from work, were the most beautiful thing he'd ever touched, he said. "They tell your story without apology." One night, wrapped in sheets and each other, she whispered against his skin, "Nakapenda." He went still. "What does that mean?" "You know what it means." She'd taught him weeks ago, then pretended she hadn't. His hand cupped her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. "Sarangi," he replied in Korean. "I love you." Different languages. Same truth. She kissed him, tasting forever in the space between their words. Outside, Seoul glittered. Inside, 2 people from different worlds built something that belonged to neither and both. A home made of chapati and kimchi, Swahili and Korean. Violence and gentleness braided together until you couldn't separate the strands. The news played on the penthouse TV while Zalika prepared breakfast. She barely paid attention until the reporter's words cut through her morning routine. Body recovered from the Han River has been identified as Lee Dong-min, a suspected member of. The spatula clattered to the floor. Lee Dong-min, the man with the snake tattoo. The trafficker Seojin had interrogated outside that warehouse. Dead. The doorbell rang before she could process. Seojin was at a business meeting. Legitimate business, he'd promised. She was alone. The woman at the door wore a sharp suit and sharper eyes. "Zalika Abeni?" Perfect English, soul-polished accent. "I'm Detective Park Ji-woo. May I come in?" Every immigrant instinct screamed to refuse. But Detective Park's smile suggested refusal wasn't really an option. They sat in Seojin's living room, the detective cataloging everything with careful eyes. The African fabrics, the photos, the clear evidence of cohabitation. "How long have you been living with Kang Seojin?" Park pulled out a tablet, opened a file. "I don't. We're not." Zalika's Korean failed her. "What is this about?" "Lee Dong-min. You knew him, didn't you? The man found in the Han River yesterday." Park swiped through photos. "The man who was following you 3 weeks ago." Zalika's throat went dry. How did you? I've been investigating Kang Seojin for 4 years. Park leaned forward, building a Rico-style case piece by piece. And you, Miss Abeni, are currently living with Seoul's most dangerous crime boss. She swiped again. Photos appeared, Seojin outside the warehouse, blood on his hands. Older photos of violence, beatings, men on their knees. Crime scene reports. Financial records showing shell companies and money laundering. This is who you're protecting, Park said quietly. This is what he does. Zalika stared at evidence she'd chosen not to see. The full scope of Seojin's empire laid bare in glossy crime scene photos and legal documents. Your visa expired 8 months ago, Park continued, voice gentle now. Almost kind. You're vulnerable. Deportable. But cooperate with our investigation, testify to what you've seen, and we'll expedite your permanent residency. Legal work permit. Protection from him. Protection from him. As if Seojin was what she needed protecting from. And if I refuse? Park's expression hardened. Then you're complicit. An accessory. When we bring him down, and we will, you'll go down too. Prison, then deportation. Your sister's school fees stop. Your mother's support stops. Everything you've worked for gone. The door opened. Seojin stood there, perfectly calm, perfectly dangerous. His eyes found Zalika first, checking for harm, then moved to Park with recognition. Detective. He removed his coat with deliberate ease. I wasn't aware we had an appointment. Just a friendly conversation with Miss Abeni. Park stood, gathering her tablet. About her immigration status. Her choices. The air felt combustible. Park handed Zalika a business card. My direct number. When you're ready to make the right choice, call me. She looked at Seojin. We're close, Kang. Closer than you think. You've been close for 4 years, he replied evenly. Yet here I am. After Park left, silence stretched like a chasm. Seojin poured himself whiskey despite it being 10 a.m. Did you kill him? Zalika's voice sounded foreign to her own ears. Lee Dongmin. Did you kill him? Yes. No hesitation. No excuse. Just truth delivered like a blade. Why? Because he was part of the trafficking ring. Seojin's jaw tightened. Because after what he did to those women, after what he would have done to you, he stopped, throat working. Because men like that don't stop unless they're stopped permanently. Zalika looked at the man she loved. The man who killed people, who built an empire on violence, who just admitted to murder while pouring expensive whiskey in their shared penthouse. Park showed me photos. Evidence. For years of, she couldn't finish. I know what I am, Seojin said quietly. I've never lied to you about that. I need time. The words came out broken. I need to think. He set down his glass, moved toward her, stopped himself. Take all the time you need. His voice was carefully controlled. I'll be here. She fled to the guest room, Detective Park's card burning in her pocket like evidence of her own complicity. 2 months later, Zalika stood in a conference room on the 42nd floor, negotiating in fluent Swahili with Kenyan coffee exporters while Seoul's elite watched with barely concealed surprise. She'd stopped being invisible. The shipping terms are non-negotiable, she said firmly, switching to English for the Korean manufacturer's benefit. But we can discuss volume discounts if you commit to quarterly contracts. The deal closed at 30% better margins than Seojin's previous attempts. His hand found the small of her back as they left, pride and possession in equal measure. You're terrifying when you negotiate, he murmured. I learned from the best. She smiled up at him, ignoring the stares that followed them everywhere. The whispers, asterisk Kang Seojin's African consultant. His mistress. His weakness, asterisk. Let them whisper. She was too busy discovering her own power. The racism came in subtle cuts. A business partner who addressed all questions to Seojin despite her being the expert. A society wife who asked if she'd been exotic entertainment before the consulting job. A restaurant host who tried to seat them in the back corner until Seojin's expression made him reconsider. After that incident, Seojin's fury was cold and controlled. Say the word, and I'll destroy his business. No. Zalika touched his clenched jaw. I don't need you to fight my battles. But I need you to stand beside me while I fight them myself. Something shifted in his eyes. Respect, maybe. Love, certainly. She was helping him build something legitimate. African trade networks, proper import channels, business that thrived in daylight. He was transitioning, slowly, away from the shadows. For her. Because of her. Sunday's video call came with her mother's increasingly pointed questions. This man you're seeing, Seojin. When do I meet him? Soon, Mama. Zalika kept her smile steady. He's complicated. Complicated how? Her mother's eyes narrowed. He's good to you? Very good. Truth. He respects me, supports my career, treats me like I'm precious. All truth. And he kills people. She didn't add. And I've chosen him anyway. After the call, guilt sat heavy in her chest. The business dinner was at Seoul's most exclusive restaurant. Old money and new criminals dining together because power recognized power. Zalika wore a dress that cost more than she used to make in a month, played the part of poised consultant while men discussed territories over aged whiskey. Detective Park found her at a luxury cafe the next afternoon. You look different, Park observed, sliding into the opposite chair uninvited. Designer clothes. Confidence. He's transformed you. I transformed myself. Zalika didn't look up from her coffee. He just gave me space to do it. Park spread new photos across the table. More violence. More evidence. A man beaten so badly his face was unrecognizable. Happened last week. Kang Seojin's orders. Want to guess what he did wrong? Zalika's stomach turned. Your immigration deadline is in 3 weeks, Park continued. Cooperate now and we'll expedite your permanent residency. Refuse, and you'll be deported when your current extension expires. She leaned forward. How many more will he kill, Miss Abeni? How many more until you see what he is? Zalika looked at the detective, earnest, dedicated, genuinely believing she was saving someone who needed saving. I see exactly what he is, she said quietly. I've always seen it. Then why? Do you know what your laws failed to stop? Zalika's voice hardened. That trafficking ring operated for 3 years. 3 years of women disappearing, and your investigation did what? Built paperwork while they suffered. She met Park's eyes. Seojin ended it in one night. Saved 13 women. Got them medical care, legal help, safety. Things your system would never provide because they were illegals. That doesn't justify murder. No, it doesn't. Zalika gathered her things. But it doesn't make your way right either. How many women are still invisible to you? How many will you fail to save because saving them isn't legally clean? Park's jaw tightened. So you're refusing to cooperate. I'm choosing my ground. Zalika stood. Even if it's dangerous. Even if it costs me everything. Because he sees me when your laws made me invisible. She walked away from Detective Park, from safety, from the easy moral choice. Walked toward Seojin, toward consequences, toward love that defied simple categories of right and wrong. Her phone buzzed. Seojin, where are you? She typed back, coming home, and meant it. Seojin was waiting when she returned to the penthouse, standing by the window overlooking Seoul. He turned at the sound of her entry, and something in his expression, vulnerability, fear, made her chest ache. Park found you. Not a question. She gave me an ultimatum. Cooperate or face deportation. Zalika set down her bag. I refused. He went very still. You what? I refused to testify against you. Refused her deal. Refused safety. She moved closer. I chose you. I'm choosing you. Zalika, his voice cracked slightly. You don't understand what you're risking. I understand perfectly. She took his hands, feeling the scars across his knuckles. I'm risking everything. And I'm doing it anyway. He pulled her against him, forehead pressed to hers, breathing like a man who'd been drowning and finally found air. I don't deserve you. Probably not. She smiled against his shoulder. But you're stuck with me anyway. When he pulled back, his expression had shifted, determination replacing vulnerability. Then we do this right. No more half measures. He took her face in his hands. I'm transitioning everything to legitimate operations. Completely. The illegal side. I'm selling it off, delegating, walking away. But I need someone I trust to build the new empire. Seojin, be my partner, he said. Not just in love. In business. In building something that can stand in daylight. His thumbs traced her cheekbones. Change me. I'll protect you. We'll create something neither of us could build alone. It wasn't a traditional proposal. It was better, a partnership forged in truth. Yes, she breathed. Yes to all of it. The immigration lawyer was blunt. Marriage provides the cleanest path to permanent residency. Given Miss Abeni's circumstances, they married 3 weeks later. Small ceremony in a private hall. Minho as witness, Yuna orchestrating details with military precision. Zalika wore white lace with Kent cloth accents. Seojin wore a traditional hanbok in black and gold. They exchanged vows in English, Korean, and Swahili, promises that belonged to all their languages. Nakapenda, she whispered. Sarangi, he replied. And in English, together, forever. 3 years later. Detective Park's case had been dismissed 8 months ago. Insufficient evidence. Witnesses recanted, digital trails gone cold. Zalika had watched the news with complicated relief. Seojin's empire was now 80% legitimate. Import-export companies, real estate holdings, a foundation employing formerly trafficked women in job training programs. The remaining 20% existed in shadows, but even that was transitioning. Zalika's consulting firm occupied 3 floors in Gangnam, bridging Korean and African markets with a staff of 20 multilingual specialists. She'd been featured in Forbes Korea last month, from invisible to indispensable. Her mother's visit came with cautious approval. So this is your life now, Mama said, sipping tea in their penthouse. Her eyes tracked African textiles on Italian furniture, kimchi pots beside Kenyan spice jars. This man, he makes you happy. Very happy, Mama. He treats you well, respects your culture. He learns Swahili with me, makes chapati on Sundays, sends money for Stella's university without me asking. Zalika met her mother's eyes. He sees me, Mama. Really sees me. Her mother studied Seojin through the kitchen doorway. This dangerous man, making her daughter laugh while attempting to pronounce a Kikuyu phrase. Then I approve, she said finally, even if I don't understand it all. That evening, Zalika and Seojin walked through Itaewon. She stopped outside the restaurant where they'd collided 3 years ago. Nalikiwa na hofu sanai yusukuyul, she said softly. I was so afraid that night. Nene insing jianch niol jitarigo isiasio, he replied in Korean. I was waiting my whole life for that collision. Together, in English, best mistake we ever made. Back in their penthouse, Seoul's sunset painted the sky in golds and purples. African music played softly. Miriam Makeba mixed with Korean indie tracks. Kimchi fermented in traditional pots beside Kenyan coffee beans and Berber spices. Photos covered the walls. Her family in Nairobi, his chosen family in Seoul. Their wedding day where 2 worlds collided into one. Seojin pulled her onto the balcony, wrapped his arms around her from behind. Regrets? None. She leaned into him. We built something impossible. A home that belonged to neither of us, he agreed. So we made it belong to both. Below them, Seoul sparkled. A city that had tried to make her invisible, but instead witnessed her transformation. Above them, stars emerged, visible even through light pollution, constant across continents. Zalika turned in his arms, kissed him softly. Nakapenda. Sarangi, he whispered back. 2 languages. 2 cultures. 2 broken people who'd collided in the dark and built something whole from the pieces. Forever. If you love the story, hit that like button, leave a comment with your favorite parts, and subscribe to Mafia Secret Love Stories so you don't miss out on our next story.